Totally Football Show. Today, Wednesday's Champions League. We talk Frankfurters getting the worst against Hot Dog Hugo and Wirtz, Chelsea's teenage kicks, Spurs, who unlike one former manager's dog, could not open their account in Monaco. Then it's on to the Premier League with Arsenal Palace, defence v attack, rebuilding Brentford, Man United against bogey side Brighton, and Wolves on 2 points. Could they? All that and more coming up in this Totally Football Show. Thursday, 23rd of October, it's the Totally Football Show. Today featuring Natalie Gedra of Sky Sports.
Bom dia.
Bom dia, você. Also here, Liam Tharme.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, Liam. And Duncan Alexander.
Hello.
Hi, Duncan. You're multitasking this morning.
A little bit.
Got your spreadsheet out?
Got many spreadsheets.
Have you? What sheets are you spreading?
I was spreading the Champions League projections there, but something's not working. I mean, the projections work, but something in our complicated back end isn't working. But anyway, I can reveal here that Arsenal are still favourites to win the Champions League.
That needle hasn't moved despite events such as Monaco 0, Spurs 0. Champions League match day 3 concluded Wednesday night. A total of 71 goals across the 18 games. It's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
It's the most in a match day since match day 1 in 2000.
Wow. That spreadsheet does work.
That spreadsheet works.
Nice.
Since Wikipedia was invented. If
Really?
you want it in those terms. Yeah.
Wow, that
Convenient.
hit, didn't it? Yeah. Presumably match day 1 in 2000 had fewer fixtures?
Yeah, this is goals per game.
Oh, right.
So, I mean, the only fair way to judge anything, really.
Yeah. So, Liverpool had 5 goals per game in their match against Frankfurt. They went a goal down against Eintracht, but then turned it around for a resounding and much-needed victory. 5-1 the scoreline there. Same for Chelsea in their victory against 10-man Ajax. 3 of Chelsea's 5 goals scored by teenagers, which is a Champions League record. FC Bayern beat Brugge 4-0. Sporting came from a goal down to beat Marseille 2-1 after Marseille went down to 10 men. While Real Madrid were 1-0 winners at home to Juventus. Monaco Spurs and Atalanta Slavia Prague both ended 0-0. And the 2 early games on Wednesday both ended 3-1. A win for Galatasaray at home to Bodo Glimt. And for Athletic Club against Karabag. Woof. Currently on maximum points and leading the way in the Champions League after 3 match days are Paris Saint-Germain, FC Bayern, Inter, Arsenal and Real Madrid on 0 points, none whatsoever so far. And bottom of the pile are Benfica and Ajax. Where do you want to begin, folks? Is it at the Deutsche Bank Stadion for Eintracht Frankfurt 1, Liverpool 5? Question mark.
Yeah, why not?
Ekitike starting against his old club and equalising, setting Liverpool on their way after a shaky start to a 5-1 win. It's just one game, so let's not go too crazy. But clearly Liverpool are back and going to win the title, and Mo Salah should be taken out back and quietly. Is that a fair reading of this game? Who was watching? Everyone was kind of watching this game, no?
Yeah, I was watching it.
What's your hot take?
The thing that was funny was the 3 goals that they scored, obviously coming back from 1-0 down in the first half. Didn't really have a lot to do with kind of the system or the shape that they were playing. It's interesting, they're starting Isak and Ekitike together. Is that going to be more of a traditional kind of strike pairing? It looks a lot more fluid than that. Space for either to kind of roam out wide. But I mean, the equalisers. I mean, it's I think the most stereotypical Bundesliga goal in terms of a way of conceding a goal I've ever seen. Of just one pass splitting the entire defence, and then 2 goals from set pieces, similar to I think last season when they scored twice from set pieces at Milan. And I enjoyed that actually. Eintracht changed the blockers on Konate and Van Dijk after Van Dijk scored the first, and then Knauf, I think the striker who got put on Konate, then lost track of Konate as well, and an argument ensued, which is a good chance to have. Liverpool didn't score enough from set pieces last season. Really, really good on transition, but I think, I don't know, they're still clearly figuring out the system.
Yeah, Ekitike, Van Dijk, Konate, Gakpo, the first 3 of those goals in the space of 9 minutes. The final goal coming from Schloboslai for a resounding win. And Hugo Ekitike with his 6th goal in 12 matches. Does this mean he's going to be the starter from now on, Natalie?
It means that he'll probably start on the weekend because Isak got off with kind of an injury, and Arne Slot spoke about him being questioned why he doesn't play Isak more. He needs to manage his minutes and so on. I think the idea of Isak and Ekitike is something that we'll probably see more of, but it looked very fluid, like the whole system with Wirtz on the right and Gakpo on the left, and Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones in the middle. No Gravenberg as well. So this whole setup is a bit different from what we usually see from Liverpool. And it obviously leaves questions of would it look as fluid if Salah was playing? Salah didn't start at Istanbul as well. It's important to remember. So because I think there's a correlation in most people's heads of, okay, he didn't play well against Man United.
They lost in Istanbul.
Yes, they lost in Istanbul, and they didn't play well against Galatasaray. But, when you have that many options up front, I think it's kind of natural. I'm not sure how much of a big deal we need to make of Salah starting on the bench against Eintracht Frankfurt. You have your options and you will rotate.
How much does this represent what Liverpool should be doing? Or is this 4-2-4 the same kind of thing that got them into trouble in recent Premier League matches?
I don't know. I think it works for the opposition that they're facing, a team that aren't quite at their level, a good side, but also they're playing a back five who are going to sit in deep. So I think this is the kind of game where you can say let's play two kind of more traditional strikers. I think Gakpo kind of becomes a third forward really, and he perhaps causes a bit, not of a problem in a sense, but if you didn't have a left winger of his quality that was so good, you could say, well, maybe we could play Isak or Ekitike off the left, but you've got kind of that's definitely found his best role there. So I think in big games, you think you wouldn't be playing this way, especially after kind of the way they conceded that opening goal of the transition issues they've had. You've got Frimpong that can play a really attacking role from right back. Kirkus can do the same off the left. That maybe in a 3 p.m. home game against a bottom half team, play the system all you want because you'll probably be fine. You can control the game. But I wouldn't, I don't think they're going to go to the Etihad and play the same shape and the same 11.
I like the fact you specify 3 p.m. as well.
It was just that classic, it's going to be one of the 10 home games that they, have a season type.
Yeah.
What about at the G-Tech let me just check what time they're playing
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock on Saturday. What do you think?
I think Salah will be back in the team on Saturday. Possibly, as Natalie says, because Isak's going to be injured, I think we suspect.
Frimpong also out for a sustained period, it looks like.
Yeah, his start's been... I mean, we see this quite a lot with players that come into the Premier League that they have very injury-hit first seasons and struggle to get up to speed. So I think, he hasn't really made much of an impact yet. But yeah, Ekitike really, I think, has now got a chance to sort of really cement himself into the team. Didn't do himself any harm with the fastest muted celebration I've ever seen last night, where he sprinted back to the halfway line, but also,
He did it kind of acknowledge the crowd all the way in, I think, immediately after scoring. So I was a bit like, how soon do you need to have the celebration be muted to, otherwise can it look a little bit after the fact where you then go, well, I've run all the way back. Okay, yeah, now I'll acknowledge it.
There'd have been some Frankfurt fans saying, he celebrated. Oh, no, well, I'm not sure. So he's running very fast. I mean, he must have been toast. He sprinted for the goal and sprinted straight back to the halfway line. So, but yeah, I think we do need to couch this result in the fact that if you look, I think this was the highest combined total for a single country in a week of Champions League in terms of goals ever. And obviously for England, yeah, but for any country, but obviously this is the Premier League and Spurs didn't even score. So I think the standard, I saw a tweet this morning, someone said it's a bit strange and sad that, going away to play European giants is now easier than going to play Palace and Bournemouth and things like that. So I think we do need to kind of remember the levels at the moment. And I still think the Brentford game is going to be a much tougher test for Liverpool than this one.
Crikey. Frankfurt continue their astonishing run of either winning 5-1 or losing 5-1 in the Champions League this season. They've had 60 goals in their 11 matches in all competitions so far this campaign.
It's probably too many, isn't it? Yeah.
Depends who they're for, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, clearly. For the opposition on Wednesday night, we'll talk a bit more about Brentford perhaps later on. But Chelsea, also 5-1 winners on Wednesday, rather easier time they had of it. Liam, you were watching this game as Chelsea notched their 4th win in a row, but all one way after Kenneth Taylor's red.
Yeah, they did the thing you need to do when, opposition team goes down to 10 players, and that was score immediately from the very free kick. Chelsea probably need a bit more of a reputation as a set-piece team. Obviously, penalties aside, part of me wondered, by the time we got that second penalty, if they might will out Cole Palmer, even in his injured state, just to take one and, for morale. But they've been really good from attacking corners this season, especially. And from the wide free kick, just got a big overload at the back post and then nodded it back across for Guiu to score. So I think, a really convincing performance, so much so that I turned it off by about half time and started watching the Spurs game in the hope I might see some goals there.
Mistake. I'm sorry for you, Leo.
So you missed what?
I missed Tyreek George's goal. Really nice move. And he, by the way, is really coming into form. It's been, increasingly a while now since we've actually seen kind of a Chelsea Academy graduate come through and cement themselves into the first team. Really talented, can play number 9. So I think he, bright future ahead.
Excellent. I remember when they were the Cole Palmer team, Chelsea. Now, are they going to become the Estevao outfit?
Yeah, I know. How did you guys like his penalty routine?
Ooh.
Because, he goes, he just gives like a half a circle.
Yeah, very Mo Salah-esque.
Game's gone.
I was talking to a friend who's a Palmeiras fan and I watched absolutely every Estevão game when he was in Brazil. And I asked if he always had that routine. And he said, absolutely, like almost 100%. There was one time he didn't do the routine. Palmeiras was playing Corinthians, the big derby, and they were given a penalty at minute 89. The game was 1-1. He changed the routine. He missed the penalty. Yes. So he keeps his routine, and it's quite even for me who has been hearing about Estevão for so long and all the praise and everything and watched him play in Brazil, it is quite surprising how quickly he established himself in the team and actually not only for the goals, but the attitude. He's always trying things. He's a nightmare to opponents and he shows so much character and so much personality. But at the same time, he left Brazil as a protagonist already. So I think people maybe don't take that too much into consideration, but he already had to deal with high amounts of pressure, even like missing a penalty against Corinthians. He had this reputation, and I heard it from more critical fans, that he didn't step up in big games. And then you see him playing Champions League. I'm like, really? Seeing with the national team is the same thing. So even though he's just 18, he already went through under a lot of pressure. So
he looked great in the World Club Cup against Chelsea.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw Liam late on that wonderful bicycle.
I did. That was great. I really enjoyed that. I think for young players just playing that kind of way, I think it's all. I know you're kind of 5 up at that point, but I think that's just a good sign of playing with a lot of freedom.
I mean, you mentioned Tyreek George, and it's a dream for UEFA, isn't it? A plucky team like Chelsea come through the Conference League and give these young players a chance, and then step up to the Champions League, and they're doing all right, and you just have to applaud.
Giving everyone's young players a chance, so they've bought all of them. Yeah.
Mind you, it was only Ajax who was mentioned sit bottom of the table alongside Mourinho's Benfica, with no points whatsoever. Johnny Heiting, Ajax manager, 12 games so far, just the 4 wins. Chelsea looking good ahead of their clash this weekend with Sunderland, with whom they're currently level on points in the Premier League. What an exciting Premier League season this is, eh? Meanwhile, Natalie, what were you doing Wednesday night?
Can you imagine, James, getting a text from producer Charlie, who I really like, with the request
Interesting caveat.
With the request of, can you watch Spurs? And you just go, yeah, of course I can. I'll watch Monaco Spurs.
Right.
And then you hear about all these goals happening, all this action. And Monaco knew, Spurs knew. It was not good.
Did you know, Natalie, it was Spurs' first 0-0 draw in any game, in any competition since March 2023. Isn't that remarkable? Not had a 0-0 draw in all that time.
I know.
And you were there to see it.
I know, right? Making history.
Yeah.
So, They got away with a point, honestly, because Monaco was so much better. 23 shots against Spurs, against 11 from Spurs. Vicario was by far man of the match, player of the match. The first half, he made 5 saves. In the second half, another 3. There was 1 in the second half. It was minute 74. It was just pure reaction. It was a low header from Teze. It came with a lot of power. He did so well, but Spurs, they just looked disjointed all over the pitch. Defensively, Romero didn't start, but it's not about that because Kevin Danso played alongside Mickey van de Ven, and Van de Ven, as always, did his part. But the balls were coming in behind the midfield with Bentancur and Palhinha and Lucas Bergvall. So they were all over the place. Second half, Ansu Fati was looking good. Second half, Minamino comes in, creating at least 3 really good chances, but also offensively, because we've been talking about lack of creativity for Spurs, and their chances were very slim. You know, they weren't really a lack of cutting edge. They couldn't keep the ball. And then Xabi Simons comes in for Bergvall in minute 60 and nothing really changes. So they just looked disjointed throughout the game. It wasn't a good performance from them, even though they haven't lost in the Champions League yet.
Okay. A lot of Spurs fans quite upset at this insistence on a midfield pairing of Bentancur and Palhinha.
Yeah, I can understand that because it is more, you could call it conservative, because you have like 2 defensive midfielders who really like to defend and tackle, and sometimes you're missing the fluidity. And when you have Xabi Simons, it just got me wondering, I don't know if for creative midfielders it takes even longer to adapt to the Premier League, because we were talking about Wirtz for so long, and he had a really good game yesterday against Frankfurt, but like, because you need to know where your teammates like to have the ball, and you need to understand not only the pace and the physicality and all the things that we always say that players need to adapt to when they get to English football, but also because you need to understand the spaces and the patterns and the movements, because you're a creative midfielder, and maybe it takes longer for them because Xabi Simons is clearly a very talented player.
And you're also a little bit at the mercy of people actually finishing off the chances that you create, particularly in the case of Florian Wirtz now, at least in terms of presenting numbers that are easily digestible to people like me.
Can I make one tiny point on Spurs?
Please, make as many tiny points as you want.
I mean, it's a real Thomas Frank midfield pairing that Natty's kind of speaking about, similar to what he had at Brentford. Norgard, Jensen, Janelt. He likes the physical, sure, technical players, but a really physical midfield. I'm going to apologise here for talking down a bit on Richarlison, but I don't think he's the easiest number 9 for number 10 to play from. I think, he likes sort of running the channels. He might create a bit of space that way, but I think it's very different to Solanke, who can kind of play that back to goal role a bit better, and you can kind of receive those passes and set it into someone like Xabi Simons. What I'm not convinced by with Spurs is the fact that there's no place for Brennan Johnson in this team. He was their top scorer last season and developed a bit of a reputation for not really being much of a winger, not really taking on his man, not really crossing much, but just scoring back post happens all the time, which I think if you've not got a number 9 that's regularly scoring, you do kind of need. So
look at Anthony Gordon at Newcastle. That's kind of what he
becoming
does.
a bit of a trademark goal, and he's obviously got the pace to do it. So I wonder if and Frank ironically has played him off the left a bit more, so kind of tried to play him in that kind of inverted role. Don't think that really suits him. He's very specialist, and then you kind of need to build the attack around him a bit more. But I think if you're lacking goals. Johnson's got 3 goals this season, only had 5 starts, come off the bench 7 times. Van der Ven's got 3, Palhinha's got 3, Richarlison's got 3. So there's a good spread of goals, but I think you do start to go where's kind of the focal point in that attack.
A lot of their creativity was taken away from them at the start of the season through injury, of course. But
James Maddison put on TikTok during the game, showing him on an exercise bike. I'm not sure what watts he was putting out, but it looked reasonable. But I mean, the good thing for Frank is that they are drawing games and winning games, even if they're not playing well. Because if we think back to when Nuno was at Spurs, similar sort of adaptation, but he was losing games. And obviously, by I think it was the 1st of November, he was axed. I think Frank's not in danger of that. But this was always going to be a work in progress, and we're seeing that at the moment.
Okay.
But main point is, I don't hold anything against producer Charlie.
Oh, I would.
Yeah,
I would. Yeah, hold it against him for a long time.
Well, he's not the only one, Natalie, because if I'm not mistaken, you were sent to Fulham Arsenal last weekend, which wasn't great. Then you had Monaco against Spurs. And where are you going this weekend?
Wolves Burnley.
Wolves Burnley. You're on a roll.
That might be a goal fest.
I mean, it's arguably the most important game of the weekend.
Yeah, it is.
2 of the only 5 teams have won all 4 divisions in English football. So, there's that.
Who's complaining now?
There's your headline. Strasbourg, you may recall, thrilling Ligue 1 just last weekend with that dramatic 3-3 draw against Paris Saint-Germain, with whom they're locked in a title race. They're in action this Thursday evening, tonight as we record, in the Conference League. They're hosting Jagiellonia, who, aren't they the top team in Poland right now, Liam?
You know your football, James. You really do.
They've got that defender. What's his name? Pozzo?
Alejandro, yes.
Phil Jagiellonia.
Anyway, I mentioned Strasbourg not just because of that, but also because their hotshot manager, Liam Rosenia, has been talking to Carl Anka and Ayo Akinwolere for the Athletic FC podcast. You can hear that from Sunday morning. That's the Athletic FC with Liam Rosenia. Real Madrid beat Juventus 1-0 on Wednesday evening. Second 1-0 in a row, and second 1-0 in which they didn't look entirely certain of 3 points, I would say, Duncan.
Yeah, I watched this one. It wasn't a classic. It was definitely a sort of, wow, it's Real Madrid against Juventus. And then it's like, oh yeah, I remember these two teams. They've both got some flaws. I mean, Real Madrid deserved to win. They had more than 20 shots. Di Gregorio made a number of good saves, but it wasn't the most convincing performance. I think the most interesting thing was in the first half, Jude Bellingham was playing sort of number 10-ish sort of role and wasn't very impressive, just kept getting in the way of other people, sort of not really being in space to pick up passes. Second half, he played a bit further forward and was really good. And the goal basically was from his sort of 6-yard box instincts after a Vinicius shot hit the post and rebounded out. And that's kind of where he was playing when he first started at Madrid and was really good. Obviously, he had that amazing goal-scoring run.
Right, he had the classic understated goal celebration as well.
Yeah.
It was just after Juve had a big chance up the other end, Andrea Cambiasso, which Courtois, who you mentioned, Di Gregorio was in fine form, but Courtois had a number of brilliant saves, particularly towards the end, because although, Real Madrid had more shots, the number of chances that Juventus had, and a better team, a team that isn't having the problems that La Signora currently has with scoring goals, could easily have walked away with a point or more from that game.
And it's one of those games, we can talk about how teams play, but results are always the ultimate thing. And like Juventus, I think our friend James Horncastle was writing on this morning that they played quite well. They looked pretty good, but they lost again, and that the pressure is mounting on Tudor. And I think they had the Vlahovic one-on-one as well at the start of the second half. So
he did not have a great game starting for once. I didn't think he.
I thought he was all right.
Did you think so?
Yeah, I think they looked pretty good on the break. But
there was one time when Yildiz worked the ball brilliantly free out on the left and crossed it, and Vlahovic, for some reason, just decided, well, I'm not going to make a run at that one. It would have been the easiest happen in the world. But hey, I'm sure we can all point at moments from all sorts of players. Juve, as you mentioned, pressure mounting on Igor Tudor. The story at the start of the week was that he had this game and the big one at the weekend against Lazio to effectively maintain his position. We'll see about that. As for Real Madrid, following their narrow 1-0 win against 10-man Getafe, and now against a similar scoreline against, well, exactly the same scoreline, to be fair, against Juventus, they will be welcoming Barcelona to the Bernabeu on Sunday in a bit of a big match. FC Bayern beat Club Brugge 4-0, featuring a first senior goal for their 17-year-old hotshot Lennart Carls Jr., I dub him, if you know your American fast food outlets.
Not that well.
Harry Kane scored. Of course he did. 20 goals now. And Vincent Kompany's side maintained their 100% winning record in all competitions. As Matt was saying on Sunday, remember when he used to be Burnley manager? Crazy.
We've now got a streak of two different Burnley head coaches walking into, or former Burnley head coaches walking into European sides with Sean Dyche. So there's and Scott Parker, I guess, has done the reverse from Brugge as well. So something in the water in Lancashire.
Sporting, we're playing Marseille. Marseille, who are on an absolute tear at the moment. Well, they 6 straight wins, I think, coming into this, scoring goals aplenty. They had a 6-2 at the weekend. They took the lead here, and all was going well until the former Chelsea and West Ham, and indeed Roma defender, Emerson Palmieri, thought he'd be a bit creative in the penalty box. VAR spotted his theatrics, and he was shown a second yellow card for simulation, and that was really where the game turned. Marseille hung on to about the, I think, 85th minute, and eventually Sporting duly equalised, and then in the 85th, and then late on found the winner. And it was goalless between Atalanta and Slavia Prague. Ivan Juric, late of Southampton, is their manager this season. He's drawn 4 of his last 5. Crikey. At 5:45, anybody see any of the early games?
I saw a really great clip of Victor Osimhen relentlessly pressing. He's really enjoyable to watch in the build-up to a goal, just really hassling. I don't feel like we see it too much from strikers these days. Probably because
Dembele-esque.
Yeah, well, Dembele is often a goal kicks where he's just on a tear, but this is just one in kind of open play where he goes, right, I'm going to try and jump on that first pass, and then just keeps kind of following the ball and chasing it round and round. I just feel like you don't get that as much anymore because defenders are so good at ball playing that you go, well, there's no point because they're just going to pop it around me. But he went for it.
And he scores goals as well. He got 2 in this match, a 3-1 win for Galatasaray against Bodo Glimt. Galatasaray, by the way, have won 10 of their 12 matches in all competitions this season and looking pretty good. So back to that long-running question, why is it the big clubs don't come in for Victor Osimhen and he's playing at Galatasaray? All due respect.
I think there's been issues over wages, perhaps. Wage demands are quite high. And I think kind of maybe some injury issues and robustness.
But there's no tactical question over him.
Perhaps not. I mean, Galatasaray are probably quite a big club as well, without pandering to them too much. That there's quite a stacked league now when you look at some of the forwards and the attacking players that have gone there. So,
and it's also a league that does spend a lot of money, that doesn't have the same restrictions that some other leagues might do. Qarabağ and Galatasaray are both on 6 points, same as Newcastle, who are in the top 8. So it's pretty tight in the race for those automatic places in the knockout stages. We're only 3 rounds in, though.
I think teams are taking it more seriously this year. I think they've kind of worked out that the playoff round in the winter isn't much fun, and you can end up with a Man City Real Madrid scenario, and everyone's really trying to get into the top 8. And if you actually look at just outside the top 8 now, you've got Barcelona in 9th, Liverpool 10th, Chelsea 11th, Galatasaray 14th. There's some.
These are all level on points.
They're all on 6. So it's obviously it's early on in the process, but I do think I think it's going to be a pretty tight battle this year.
And you're bound to get 1 or 2 big clubs that don't make the top 8 that are then going to end up playing a tougher game in the round of 16.
Yeah, I mean, last year it was kind of complicated, wasn't it? Because City and PSG finished so low down that this kind of the seeding system that was designed to make sure that didn't happen kind of went, sorry, we're going to have to play this big game. But
well, there's a lot of league phase football to be played. A shout out though for Athletic Club of Bilbao, who in the other early game Wednesday beat Qarabağ 3-1. to claim their first Champions League victory since 2014. Wow. All right. That's enough Champions League then, It'll return in 2 weeks' time?
Yeah.
2 weeks' time. Premier League Matchday 9. Friday night, Leeds face West Ham, who are in the midst of their worst ever start to a Premier League campaign. Wow. Worse even than that famous one they had under Alan Pardew and then later Alan Kirbishley, which we recently talked about in Totally Extra, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah.
An enjoyable romp.
It certainly was. Will this one end as well? We just don't know. Anyway, Ellen Road is their destination on Friday night. There's no Saturday lunchtime game this weekend, but at 3 o'clock you have 2 matches. Chelsea against Sunderland, who are level on points currently, and Newcastle against Fulham, who have a great record against the Magpies, strangely enough.
Oh, really?
At 5:30 on Saturday, Man United go for a brain-shattering 3rd straight victory. However, they're at home to Brighton. Liam will be opining about that fixture very shortly. And then, unthinkably enough, at 8 o'clock on a winter's evening, Brentford host Liverpool. Jordan Henderson, big game for him. Big. Sunday, 4 matches at 2 o'clock. Wolves Burnley. Natalie's on her way straight off this podcast. That's bottom of the table against 4th from bottom of the table. Arsenal are taking on Crystal Palace, who are 5th right now, but numbers suggest might just be the best team or the team best placed to unlock that rock-hard Arsenal defence. Villa, who are on a great run of results themselves, host Man City, and then you've got Bournemouth against Nottingham Forest. which will be Sean Dyche's Premier League debut on the Forest bench, although they've got action tonight against Porto in the Europa League. At 4:30 in the Premier League on Sunday, Everton host Spurs. What are you most interested in seeing? Natalie, obviously for you it's the game at Molineux, but if you weren't going to that one, which one would you pick?
Arsenal Palace.
Really?
Definitely.
Why is that then?
Yeah. Well, because Crystal Palace is one of the most interesting teams to follow. They are, at the same time that they have their own brand of football and their clear ideas and patterns, they are very adaptable as well. They're strong defensively. They can be direct. There's the Mateta whole entertainment guaranteed. And with Arsenal, I just think there are a lot of like interesting things happening at Arsenal, but especially this moment of the season last year, they picked up just 2 points from possible 12. So it's still early, blah, 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 October, we still have to wait. But last year, this was a crucial period because Liverpool opened a 9-point gap going to November international break. So it is important for them to, get as many points as possible. And Arsenal's attack, of course, I find it interesting what's happening with Leandro Trossard and Martinelli, because they seem to be pushing each other way more than we expected, especially if we compare it to last season, because both been scoring when they get their chances. And I feel like they can benefit as well from all the attention the right-hand side gets with Saka and Timber, because Timber's having just a really, really good season. He was really good last season, but the partnership between them, and I feel like on the left-hand side, they kind of benefit from the attention that opponents put in Saka and Timber.
I mean, the counterpoint to that Trossard-Martinelli thing is that they're the sort of players that have one good game in two. So if you can get the rotation right, then you're flying, and that's kind of what Arsenal are doing.
And the key attacking out on the left is Calafiori, really. I mean, some of his unlapping runs have been really fantastic. At Fulham as well, that was a really big threat, kind of those switches out. And the point Nassim made was really interesting about kind of the this period of the season for Arsenal, because Arteta said after the Fulham game that he pointed out they were kind of on a run of matches where last season they'd drawn or lost these fixtures. So they lost away to Newcastle, lost at home to West Ham, drew away to Fulham, drew at home to Palace. That it's kind of that thing of not just looking at where they are this season, but saying relatively, where did you drop points last season? Where do you need to be better?
Uncle Jeff.
The Uncle Jeff table, or coefficient, something like that. These are the fixtures they need to win if they're going to win the title.
Well, but that was the difference last season, right? Because they lost as many games as Liverpool did. It was about having more draws. So I guess that is it's the classic kind of you can only beat who's in front of you, but that's what they're doing better this season.
Well, defensively, their numbers are remarkable. 9 clean sheets in 12 matches, only 3 goals conceded in all competitions.
Well, I was going to sprinkle some of those numbers on in a sort of cavalcade. Because it is very much the Palace are Palace got the most shots on target, the best XG, the most big chances in the Premier League this season. So they are the attacking team.
Right.
But Arsenal haven't faced a single shot on target in either of the last 2 games. They could be only the second Premier League team to go 3 in a row if that happens. They've faced the fewest shots on target, the lowest XG, as you say, conceded the fewest goals. So it's almost like the ultimate attack v defence. Super Classico.
Is there anything about the way that Palace move the ball, about the way they construct their attacks, that you think Arsenal might be vulnerable to?
I think the fact they've got really attacking wing backs, Munoz especially down the right, can quite easily overload a back four. We've seen that quite a lot recently, especially in the Bournemouth draw, where the 2 goals Palace score to make it 2-1 then 2-2. It's basically Munoz being the spare man at the far post and playing these really great low crosses. And the way they get, I think Sarr especially, but they get these number 10s kind of crashing the box as well, means that Mateta kind of doesn't. If Mateta gets marked in the box and they've still kind of got options, the transitions as well have hurt big teams. They've got a really good record against kind of big 6 clubs. You look at how well they've played against City and Liverpool, multiple occasions since obviously that big defeat at the Etihad quite a few months ago now, when Glasner, quite confidently said if City play the same way again, then we'll beat them. And turns out that wasn't just kind of fighting talk. So I think, this should tactically at least be a really interesting matchup. But Arsenal also shown that I think, with the Leeds game, that if the team wants to be physical and kind of a bit more transitional, that they can also get a bit blown out the water. So it probably needs Palace to stay in the game for quite a while. And obviously, Eberechiesa going back to play against the former club.
Well, actually, them coming to see him. What do you think is going to happen, Natalie?
Oh, God. I have no idea, James.
Don't know. Let's find out.
Yeah, let's
Sunday,
find out.
2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Arsenal are currently 3 points clear of Manchester City, who've got a tough test themselves. They're off at Villa Park, where they've lost in their last 2 visits, and they're finding an Aston Villa side who, after that winless beginning to this campaign, are now on 5 straight victories. Might even be 6 straight or none straight, depending on what happens on Thursday night, I now realise, because they've got Go-Ahead Eagles in the Europa League on Thursday night. One of the all-time great names, Go-Ahead Eagles.
Maybe that's what Palace will be doing in N5.
There you go.
With Villa, maybe the biggest boost is that they looked really flat at the start of the season. And now, after the win against Spurs, Unai mentioned that he was very happy with the levels of energy, because they've always had a good team, a really good manager. They had a poor transfer window that we spoke in length about. But since they overcame that dry spell of not scoring, they scored in every league game. So and now they have some interesting tests, because they played Spurs, now they're playing City, and then they have Liverpool at Anfield and Bournemouth at home. So it's going to be an interesting spell for Villa. And as for City, we just have to keep an eye on Nico Gonzalez, because he left the pitch midweek against Villarreal after a clash, maybe having a bit of an issue with his ankle. We don't know how bad it is. Maybe it was just a knock, but if it is an issue, then it's a real problem for Pep, because you have Kovacic, who would be an option, but he's been nursing kind of like the surgery that he had in his Achilles during the summer. So he's been nursing that and kind of managing his minutes. You could also play John Stones as a defensive midfielder, but he's been fit and he's looked good this season when he's playing. You almost don't want to risk your chances by playing him 2 games in a row. So yeah, it is something to keep an eye on.
The other big problem for Pep is that Erling Haaland's scoring too much. I read a lot about this. Is this a problem for City? He's scoring too many goals. What happens if he doesn't?
Amount of goals for Erling Haaland to score then?
I don't know, but it's too many of the Man City goals. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Anyway, he's doing it for now. We'll move on to Brentford, Liverpool. Now, we discussed Liverpool, but Brentford are a whopping story, and one that you've addressed this week on The Athletic, Liam.
I did my best.
Writing about the rebuild that Keith Andrews is currently supervising. Keith Andrews, who was being embraced by Igor Thiago on Monday night.
That's a turn up for the books.
Yeah, that would be an embrace and a half, wouldn't it? No, Igor Thiago, who looks a lot of fun and scored the opener against West Ham and then jumped on his manager, which is always nice to see. In your piece, you point out that Keith Andrews, who a lot of people had low expectations of, he's actually had exactly the same record after 8 matches that they did Brentford last season under Thomas Frank.
Yeah, I mean, Brentford, I think, under Frank could be a lot more patchy than people seem to remember. They were often hard to play against, but at times, would get kind of blown out the water in certain games, but have dealt as a club, I think, really, really well with having to just keep reinventing themselves. You can, I think at this point, almost make a starting 11 of players that they've sold or lost, and obviously then losing their coaches and coaching staff over the summer. Narratives shift really quickly in football, where kind of, for a sign of how well they're doing is that no one's really talking about Brentford now as kind of relegation candidates. I don't think they're going to necessarily be that high up the pitch. But that first half from the Forest game on the opening day, where they were 3-0 down and people went, oh, this is going to be like every game this season, and it turned out Forest just had a really good half, and Brentford have been a lot more solid since. And it was quite a stark contrast, I thought, to seeing West Ham and how, onto like a third different head coach that looked, this calendar year looked a lot less cohesive as a team. Nuno had tried something with kind of these fullbacks playing on the opposite side. So Kyle Walker-Peters is a right footer off the left, Ollie Scarles is a left footer off the right. And we're saying, we tried to be compact, but, we knew how physical Brentford were. We just kind of couldn't compete with them. And this is a Brentford team that looks so different even to last season. I think they've recruited really smartly. Kelleher's probably an upgrade in goal. I mean, Jordan Henderson I think that's the perfect role for him in that team, where, he can get on the ball, can control it. He's got a creative player in front of him in Damsgaard. He's got Yarmulke next to him, who just seems to sprint across the pitch for kind of 90 minutes. So they've got, a really good balance. Thiago might be a nice halfway house between kind of that Tony target man and the Visser penalty box poacher. So, if you were telling me on Monday night that you're looking at two teams, and one of these teams has lost 39 goals in the summer from two players that they'd sold, I'd say that's definitely West Ham, which is about as big a compliment as I can give Brentford.
Yeah, crazy numbers from that match. In terms of the shots in target, touches in the West Ham box, and something really interesting maybe building at Brentford, who are currently sat 13th in the table. It's pretty tight there, though. A win here could see them moving up to kind of Crystal Palace-esque levels. Anyway, they're hosting Liverpool. That is late on Saturday. Duncan, Chelsea, earlier, one of the 3 o'clock games, are up against Sunderland. This is the first time that this fixture has been played since 2017, which was?
The John Terry farewell incident, as it's known, when Sunderland agreed to put the ball out of play on 26 minutes, although I can't quite remember, but I'm sure it was the 27th minute, because that's how football works. It
was closer to 26th than 27th.
Yeah, I mean, just an odd postscript in the Premier League. I mean,
so this was John Terry retiring.
Yeah.
And as you say, David Moyes' Sunderland
yeah.
agreed to suspend proceedings.
Yeah.
While they essentially formed a guard of honour for his exit after he'd... when you're trying to leave a party and it takes you about half an hour to say goodbye to everyone, that was John Terry in the first half at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, I mean, some people might call it a classy touch. Other people might say it brings the game into disrepute. I think both are
Where
valid.
do you sit, Duncan Alexander?
Well, I don't like to see games slow down. So, yeah.
Ball in play fan.
Yeah, I'm a huge ball in play fan.
Maybe there are numbers that can explain this, but only Man City have scored more goals than Chelsea in the Premier League this season. And yet, they sit on the same points as Sunderland, who've had the joint fewest shots on target in the Premier League this season. Maybe there aren't numbers that explain it. Maybe that's the magic of football. More than one way to skin a cat called football. Very good. What chance do you give Sunderland of speaking of cats? Cat's the wrong thing to say because what chance do you give these Black Cats of producing a bit of an upset at Stamford Bridge Saturday afternoon, Natalie?
They've been very efficient, Sunderland. You're talking about numbers. They've been efficient with their chances, but they've been really good at home. So I think the Stamford Bridge factor might be big, but it's an interesting matchup because Sunderland is definitely one of the coolest stories of the Premier League so far. Yeah.
I never asked anybody else what match they're looking forward to this weekend, but Liam, yours might well be Manchester United against Brighton because Manchester United have won back-to-back games for the first time under Ruben Amorim, etc., and B, Brighton are your team.
I think United are in a very interesting spot. There's something Gary Neal was talking about on Monday Night Football, and I thought he explained it very eloquently about how hard it is to dominate games playing a back three or a back five, and that we've seen United now. Some of the wins they've had, the big game wins that they've had, have been because they're kind of playing a little bit more underdog football, and they can play that way. They can do that at Anfield, can do that at the Etihad. It's historically, in the past few years, a game like playing a Brighton at home, kind of a mid-table team that will sit off a bit, might press you a bit, will play out, but will still go direct, that aren't going to kind of, purely sit back, aren't going to purely kind of press you high, that they seem to really kind of struggle against. So I think this in many ways is more of a real test for them because they're going to play more games that are like a Brighton at home than they are Anfield, over the course of a season. So yeah, I think it's starting to click. Their kind of chance creation numbers are really good. I think some of the signings are settling in really well. Brian Mbeumo, especially down that right hand side, that number 10 role is really well suited for him. That relationship with Ahmad, I think, is really coming into fruition. And they've got a bit more of a settled back line now as well. I think that was a part of a problem that they just, through injuries and clearly not being certain on kind of the back three is definitely starting to settle. And it looks like they've now got a first choice keeper after cycling through what feels like about 8 different goalkeepers in this calendar year alone. So I think the ingredients are there, but they also feel like they're kind of only one big defeat away from the narrative completely flipping on its head and being here this time next week saying, is Ruben Amorim about to get sacked? So that's Man United currently.
Liam mentioned Mbeumo. I was reading an article on The Athletic from Carl Link about Matheus Cunha because I was actually surprised with it's a curious number. In in 8 games, he hasn't had an assist or a goal. He hasn't scored or assisted, which is
weird. Yeah, because he's looked like the best.
Exactly. Yeah, this is the surprising part, and I think it says a lot about his work rate, because against Liverpool, for example, they didn't play up until Češko came on second half. They didn't play with a recognized number 9. Everyone thought it would be Mateus Cunha, and it was kind of a change in their shape, because it was more fluid than the 2 number 10s and the number 9. So, and these kind of, it's Mateus Cunha kind of makes it happen, because he did something similar playing for Brazil when they didn't play with a recognized striker. They played with Vinicius Júnior, Estevão, and Rodrigo, and Mateus was just filling up the gaps while they were playing as false 9s.
In the 5-0 against South Korea, was that?
No. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was already resenting you for mentioning Japan.
The other game.
Yeah, the good one, yes.
Right, yeah.
Sorry, James. That was very rude of me. But yes, against South Korea.
Right.
And
Not the other game.
No, let's not go there. But yeah, I think it speaks a lot about his work rate and the things that he can bring to Man United that are not the things we expect him to bring, and he will bring. But it's just he's such a good player to have around because of that as well.
All right, well that all sounds really positive of Man United. Here's what doesn't: they have lost 6 of their last 7 Premier League meetings with Brighton, including Brighton's last 3 visits to Old Trafford. And Danny Welbeck's definitely going to score again against his former club.
He's in really, really good form. And, it's we're in this era now where you're getting a lot of strikers that are able to kind of peak quite late in their career with, I feel like every season there's a conversation about, Harry Kane's in, the form of his life. Robert Lewandowski kind of a few years ago. There's so much, I think, now that he kind of prolongs players' careers of sports science, etc. But I think you can quite clearly see who the smarter strikers are kind of later in their career that have the really good positioning and kind of make runs really intelligently. And I think for Welbeck, a big help for him has been Jorginho Rutter as a kind of number 10 when he plays. Plays really great through balls, which is what Welbeck lives from, and just having another physical presence. I think that Welbeck likes to be on the last line, someone that can then kind of play between the lines a little bit more. I always said that Danny Welbeck, and I mean this is a compliment, I think tends to be better in a game the less of the ball he actually touches. The more you try and get him to drop in, kind of receive back to goal, I don't think has ever kind of been his style. It's been more about run the channels, get into the box, and he's such a versatile goal scorer that it's quite a funny conversation from a Man United perspective as a player. Obviously, they thought about possibly bringing him back, and you look at the goals numbers now compared to what some of their more expensive signings have returned, and you think what might have been.
Bournemouth unbeaten in their last 10 league meetings with Forest, and on an excellent start to the season, currently sitting 4th in the Premier League table.
Potentially one of the worst opponents you can have when you've been through so much is Bournemouth, and their insane levels of energy. I mean, I'm just trying to understand how players will deal with, okay, now we're playing Nuno football. Now it's Ange. Now it's Deitch. We go back and forth, and it must be exhausting.
You don't do, that's the thing. Yeah, you can't seamlessly transition. And I thought they had an interesting summer because they recruited quite a few technical players. You look at like Douglas Luiz, Zinchenko, Kali Mwendo, Amari Hutchinson. They brought in, these smaller, more technical players to kind of complement a lot of the bigger physical profiles they had. Chris Wood, Morgan Gibbs-White. Okay, Gibbs-White is very creative, but again, a lot of guys that you say can play in a very physical style, can deal with long balls, counter-attacks, can deal with kind of sitting deep. And I think hopefully that Dyche will find somewhere that is somewhere between the two. I think Nuno's style by the end of last season became not too extreme, but there's quite a low ceiling to how many times you can win that way. They had a very big outlier season of you can't really try and win 1-0 38 times in a season. You need a little bit more variety. Likewise, we've seen with Postecoglou at Tottenham that there seems to be quite a short shelf life as well to being as expansive and kind of wild as he is. So I think if they can average out somewhere in the middle, especially in a European season where, let's be honest, they're going to get very little time on the training ground in the next couple of months, and that is probably going to be walkthroughs and a couple set pieces, because it's just too much intensity in terms of match loading.
I think it's quite interesting philosophically as well, because, Sean Dyche isn't averse to, in press conferences or on podcasts, sort of saying football hasn't changed, it's still about running and all this stuff. And in some ways, Andoni Iraola is proof of that, like in some ways his style is quite sort of 70s and 80s, but they just do it very, very well. And Dyche has lost his last 3 games against Bournemouth as a manager. His last game as Everton boss was a 1-0 defeat in Bournemouth in January. So I think, to Natalie's point, I think if he could have picked any game to start with as Forest manager in the Premier League, it probably wouldn't have been this one. So I think it is Bournemouth. I think Bournemouth, if people haven't watched them yet, definitely do, because they're so entertaining and so fun. Exactly.
It's been a long year realising that Sean Dyche was Everton manager / head coach, whatever his role was, this calendar year.
It's the first thing I thought on New Year's Day when I woke up. I was like, is Sean, he's still in our league, but not for long. But now he's back.
Right, nobody leaves until we've talked about Newcastle, Fulham, Everton, Spurs, and yes, Natalie, Wolves, Burnley. Go on then.
Yeah.
Relegation 6-pointer.
Yes.
Yeah.
My moment has come. Okay, so Wolves Burnley. I'm going to sell this game. Well, with Wolves...
It's a direct rival to this Bournemouth game that Duncan's touting there.
I know, yeah.
It's up for grabs. If you persuade me now, I'll watch Wolves Burnley.
Go on,
that's a guarantee.
Oh, that's... Okay. Deep breath. With Wolves, not a good start here, because there's a real problem of lack of goals.
Yes.
And they are the team who scored last alongside Forest. And Strand Larsen, he was supposed to be the main goal scorer, but he hasn't scored in the season yet. There's a bit of an issue with his Achilles, but still there is a lot of frustration around that. In the summer, not so long ago, Newcastle was trying to sign him, put 2 bids, they rejected both, and he stayed, and it's not happening. Wolves are actually 1 point better than last season after 8 games. Yes, when they lost 7 of their opening 8 games. So the bar's kind of low. The difference
is that from the Wolves press office? That
Statistically.
The difference is last season, 4 teams had failed to win a game in the 8 opening Premier League matches: Ipswich, Crystal Palace, Southampton, and Wolves. And now they're 5 points from safety already. They have the worst goal difference in the league against a Burnley that will go to Molineux, and are the only team in the Premier League yet to win an away game.
Well, Wolves are the only team in English League football yet to win any match at all.
Yeah, and Burnley hasn't won away, so there it is. They lost all their 4 games away from Turf Moor, and they won all their 7 points this season at home.
Burnley ranked bottom of the league for average possession, successful passes, passing accuracy, shots attempted, touches in the opposition box, and expected goals. They've also played the highest percentage of long passes. They're not in the relegation zone, though, unlike Wolves, who are bottom of the table with 2 points after 8. Hey, extrapolate that they're on course, potentially. They are.
He doesn't want it to be true.
2 points after 9 games, that'll put them on track.
No.
Yeah, it will.
But for Derby?
Yeah.
No.
It will.
We've just done the podcast on that Derby. We know it won't ever get beaten.
So you need it to not be beaten, otherwise the podcast is then rendered.
Just delete it. Delete it. But yeah, no, Wolves will get at least 19 points.
All right.
I've worked it out.
They've won twice in the cup, so they're not incapable.
They've conceded late goals to draw in recent games. Then I think they're all right.
But I think
they'll be all right.
I mean, to Natalie's point about trying to last,
they will be all right. Because I was watching the Brighton game, and one thing that struck me was how they looked a bit like a lower league team playing a cup game where you're 1-0 up, and then say we're just going to completely sit in. They're really, really passive. And that's hard because they're not that watertight defensively, where you say, well, you've theoretically got enough attacking quality. I think it's interesting they've tried to change system from, Pereira came in, installed a back 3 last year and had success with that. They've now gone back to a 4-3-3, but they're probably a bit of a case study for how many times you can keep selling, top players and trying to reinvent. I was obviously praising Brentford for doing that, and Wolves just haven't managed that as well, and they're really suffering because of that.
It's also a case study in that new managers shouldn't go down the pub every time they win a game in the first few months, because you can't keep winning.
He just gets it.
He just gets it. He just gets Wolverhampton. But, I mean, on our weekly alternative table feature on the Athletic,
what's this week?
This week's about big chances. And Wolves only had 5 all season, but they have scored 4 of them. But Strand Larsen, who you mentioned, Natalie, hasn't had any in nearly 500 minutes of football. And he is, he had a good conversion rate with him last season. Like, to your point there about attacking, it maybe create some chances for him, and they might be right.
But then they lost Nelson Semedo in the summer, lost Ryan Nouri as well. So I guess you maybe had to change the system to some extent because you've lost players that's built upon. Lost Cunha, so
You're saying they're now down to a lone wolf.
Nice. Everyone's lost someone, Liam. Newcastle are taking on Fulham. Newcastle are impressive in the Champions League this week, but they're still only 14th. That's a bit rubbish. Their only Premier League wins this season have been at home to relegation teams like our friends Wolves and Forest. Fulham, does this fixture rank in that kind of category? Given Fulham's troubled start, they're 15th. 3 defeats in a row for Marco Silva's side, though they did do the double over Newcastle last season.
Yeah, they still have a few injuries to deal with. Anthony Robinson being the long-term injury, but especially Lukic, which impacts really on their midfield. They've been playing with Berge and Lukic for so long. So they played with Tom Kearney against Arsenal. I think it is a chance for them to try on some things. But if you're going to St. James Park, might as well be conservative, But Newcastle, the way they played against Benfica midweek, this is kind of what I expect them to do more consistently in the Premier League. Right. And because last season, they were so good in just finishing off games and being relentless until they finish off those games, and we haven't really seen that in the Premier League consistently. They dropped points they wouldn't last season, which is kind of normal considering the changes they went through and the whole Isaac situation that we've had enough of that. But even Harvey Barnes mentioned after Benfica that everyone needs to chip in more, even though Voltemad has been like a goal scorer. They all need to chip in more. And Anthony Gordon's been having, such a season, So
and Harvey Barnes as well. Whenever he comes on, he seems to score.
They've got really good depth out wide, I think. I mean, I'm still not entirely sure how this Alanga signing's working out. He's got the perfect profile to play in that team. It's a real shame that you've got injuries to Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento, because I think that 2 of the kind of the best fullbacks in the league when they're fully fit. I'm a massive fan of Anthony Gordon, who's the primary goal, his kind of trademark goal now seems to be that big sprint in behind the fullback to get a back post happen. It's become, I think, a much more common goal for Premier League wingers, where you just get fewer opportunities to cut in, teams double up on you, and I think that far side fullback's always a bit liable to switching off or kind of not being fully aware. I just think he is a separate discussion. Is probably going to be England's first choice winger when it comes to World Cup next year. I think he's the perfect profile for that. There's not many players in the Premier League that I think at his level I think it's phenomenal. And
7 clean sheets in 12 matches this season in all competitions for Newcastle.
The one other Premier League game this weekend is the one that finishes off the round. Everton Tottenham, Sunday, 4:30. Straight after which we'll be doing our Totally Football Show roundup of all the action. Spurs, who are actually top of the away league table. There's a league table you can do, Duncan. Away results. And Spurs are top, I can reveal. 17th, though, in the home league. If you're doing the home league, they're 17th in that one.
It's a real contrast.
It is, isn't it? Why is that then?
Thomas Frank, isn't it?
But why?
Probably plays more classic away football than home football, built on solid defensive foundations, not a high scoring team. I think, just tend to be a solid team, be a bit more direct. You look at the midfields now, we've spoken about that earlier, that he's picking. I appreciate Kulusevski and Maddison are both out injured. It might look different if they were fit, but they're very physical midfields. I think even putting Lucas Bergwijn number 10 over perhaps someone like a Simons or a Kudus and having more pace out wide is another sign of that. So, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing considering where Tottenham were. I think they perhaps need to overcorrect a bit more in the direction of being defensive and then try and find a happy medium somewhere in between, because they were obviously just too many injuries under Nagy Postecoglou as well, which I think is also a reflection of the style they were playing, of how high the line was, the big aggressive sprints they were having players doing, especially the centre-back. So I think, partly that is a big reason. And I think changing the style a bit should help them with that. And now they've got European football again to, you can't try and play that aggressive with your pressing, your runs, beyond the ball, playing short every time. They needed to be a little bit more streetwise. Maybe they've gone a bit too far in that showed against Monaco.
Top two assisters in the Premier League in this game as well. Jack Grealish and Kudus, both showing that having strong legs and shielding the ball is still valuable.
That's nice. Grealish back after his spell in the stands for the Man City fixture. This game also featuring two of the three biggest dribblers in the Premier League this season. Kudus is number one. Iliman Jai is the third best, and the one in the middle is Jeremy Doku.
Not a big dribbler, is he? He's tiny.
Natalie, Everton yet to lose at the Hill Dickinson in 5 matches in all competitions. They have only won 1 of their last 6 in all competitions.
Yeah, it's if you talk to David Moyes, he will convince you that they are having a very positive season. And I think to an extent he is right, because it is progress compared to what we've seen from Everton in the past couple of seasons. And maybe this is how we should look at Everton's season. It's a season of progress. I know it doesn't sound sexy. I know it doesn't sound so appealing, headlines and all, but it is significant because they've shown progress, especially creation-wise. In Dye, he's been really good since last season, but evolving in his versatility, and with Jack Grealish and even Dewsbury Hall, like the three behind the striker, they are struggling to score goals, and we've spoken about the striker position and the problems there. But there is clear progress with Everton. I think they can aim for a top half finish. I think that would be a good season for them. They're 12th on the league now. So yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this week does remind them again that they kind of threw away the Carabao Cup campaign, because it's Carabao Cup midweek next week. And
is it?
It was just there. It was
right there for them. Wow. That's the game that wraps up the Premier League weekend, and indeed today's Totally Football Show. Many thanks then to Duncan and Liam and Natalie, Jake and producer Charlie in the booth, and you listener or viewer. We are very much a visual option for you Sunday night, around about 7 o'clock, when we'll be live streaming our recording of the Monday morning roundup. So perhaps you'll join us for that. Otherwise, just wait and it'll drop on Monday anyway. Super. Have a great weekend until we see you again. For now, from all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.